Alright, welcome back. I'm going to assume you made it through the first lesson. Um, just as a recap, we went over on the Polygons tab. These first 8 buttons are the shapes you can create. Q is a shortcut for the selection tool. W is a shortcut for the move tool. E is a shortcut for the rotate tool, and R is a shortcut for the scale tool. Now, I mentioned briefly before that when you model objects, sometimes it's helpful to use all 4 views just to make sure that things are aligned properly. Now, just looking at my screen right here, you'd say, okay, it's in wireframe mode. The keyboard shortcut for that is the number 4. But you would say, okay, these two spheres, look like touching, and they look about the same size. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and hit 5 on the keyboard, and they don't look as much like they're touching now because you'd see them intersect here, but they still look the same size. So if I were doing eyeballs or something, you'd say, oh, that's okay, that's okay. And they look like they're right next to each other, but if I hit spacebar to go into my 4-up view, you'll see in the front view one of them looks larger than the other, and from the top view, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here and hold Alt and click the middle mouse button, and that will let me move it around. You'll see that this one is much closer. That's why it's much bigger on here, and this one's further back. So I'm going to go ahead and put my mouse over the perspective view and hit the space bar, and I'm actually just going to rotate around my scene. Now you see that they're definitely not lined up. So, okay, they look the same size. So I'm going to select this, and I actually want them next to each other. So I'm going to put on my move tool with a W, or go over here, and I'm going to grab this blue handle. I'm going to slide it right up next to my other sphere. Now you see that one's much larger. Since it was farther away, it looked smaller. So it's very important when you're modeling complex objects that you either pan around the scene and make sure everything's in the right place, or tap the spacebar and model with all 4 views up. Like in the top view here, if I use my scroll wheel, zoom in, hold Alt and click in the scroll wheel to move around, I would say, okay, well, I want to move this closer so they're aligned right. And in the front view, I could hit R to put on my scale tool and scale this down so they're about the same size. And then hit W to put my move tool back on, move it out just a little bit, and then go over to my perspective view, hit the space bar, use the Alt key to move around, and I've got something that I could use for a pair of eyeballs or what have you. So in this tutorial, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag a selection around these and hit delete to get rid of those. We're going to build something that slightly resembles Mickey Mouse, or maybe a teddy bear, or a mouse bear thing. At any rate, it uses pretty much entirely spheres, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the sphere tool, or the create polygon sphere, and click and drag one of those into the grid here, and then that's wonderful. That'll be a great head. Now let's create the ears. So I'm going to click on my sphere. I'm going to make one that I think would be about good for any ear. So I'll go ahead, I already have my move tool on. I'm going to do this in with all 4 views up, just because I think it's going to be easier. I'm going to hold Alt and click the middle mouse button to move my side view into somewhere that's helpful. So now keep in mind, in the side view, I'm looking at him from the side of his head, so I'll line that up. Okay, so it's right next to his head. And then in the front view, go over here and I'll drag it into his head so it actually connects. Maybe move it up a little bit. And grab my scale tool, or you can hit R and in the side view I'm going to scale it in, because his ear wasn't a perfect sphere, it was more of a squashed one. So now if I hit the space bar and go back to my perspective view, I can pan around and that looks great. Okay, so now I'm going to hit the space bar again. Now that I've checked it, I'm going to go ahead and grab my polygon sphere tool. I'm going to make another sphere. Now I'm going to put on my move tool. In my top view I'm going to align it again around the center here and move it over. But this sphere is quite a bit bigger, so I'm going to grab my scale tool or hit R, and I'm going to scale it in sideways here so it's about the same width as the first ear. Then grab this blue handle and scale it in so it's about as thick as the first ear. Okay, I just had them lined up so that they would look about the same, and if you're looking at just the top view you think, okay, they're exactly the same. Wrong! Yeah, go to the front view, put on your move tool or hit W, move it up into place here, up right about next to this other one. Readjust the view by holding Alt and hitting the middle mouse button. Put your scale tool back on, which is R on the keyboard. I'm going to scale it in. Now it looks like I have a pretty good match. But now as you see, it's not on the other side of his head, so go ahead and put the move tool back on. Move that beast over. Awesome. We've got us, hit the spacebar, we've got us a little beginning of a Mickey Mouse type shape, or teddy bear type shape. I'm going to go ahead and aim for teddy bear with this one, I think. So I'll go ahead and make another sphere. This one's going to be the beginning of his little snout, or nose. So I will go ahead and drag that into his face. Wonderful. And I will go ahead and click to create another sphere. And move that one into place. Oh, looks like this one's a little bit off center. So I'm going to put my 4 views up. Actually, I'm going to go into just the front view by tapping the space bar. And I'm going to move. Now actually, this is where wireframe is helpful, because I can just click on this on the base of his nose and center that, and then click on what's actually going to be his nose and center that. I can kind of see more than one area, so I know kind of what's going on. Tap the space bar, put my mouse over the perspective view, tap the space bar again, and actually I think that I'm going to squash this part. So I will grab the scale tool, scale it in on this blue handle, grab the move tool, which is W, move it back out of his face just a little bit, grab his nose, move that in just a little bit. Awesome. Let's see, now got about a minute and a half left, so we're going to try and make some eyes, and this will be rather fast. Go ahead and grab a sphere, make a sphere here, hit R to put on my scale tool, squish it in sideways so it's about an acceptable eye shape. And his eyes actually aren't going to sit exactly on his head. They're going to pretty much be resting on top of his nose. So from the side view I can see how far in to move it. And from the front view I can move it in just onto his nose. And then I can actually go up to Edit and down to Duplicate, or hit Control D on the keyboard. That will duplicate anything that's selected. Now I can move this over to the other side. Now he's got some great big googly eyes here. Okay, that he's very cartoon-like because they're not actually attached to his head. And then I will grab another sphere and make the pupil, which is going to be just a little one. I'm going to move it, hit spacebar to move to my 4 view, and then in the side view I'm just going to move it into his eye. And then in the front view make sure it's actually centered in his eye. Edit down to Duplicate, or hit Control D, and then in the front view just drag it to the other side. Put my mouse over the perspective view, tap the space bar, and I've got me a little teddy bear. Now, I mean, you can grab the rotate tool by hitting E or going over here, and you can rotate his eye back and move it to set it in his head as well. That will make him a little bit more realistic. But you know the tools now, you can make your own teddy bear Mickey Mouse type thing. So play with that, and I will see you in the next lesson.